Hello and welcome to my podcast number 8 in English. Today we're going to talk about Mosaic crochet, a short poll that you might want to take, and my current work in progress. If you already know me, you know that I am Annette Petervi, and thank you so much for coming back. If you're new to the channel, well, I'm Annette Petervi. I'm a Swedish-born crochet designer and teacher, currently living just outside Lyon in the southern half of France. And I've been living here for longer than I ever lived in Sweden now. So I'm both French and Swedish, actually, at least in some ways. It's been quite a while, once more, about 2.5 months. I had the firm intention to film much more regularly, but this spring has just been crazy. But now summer's here and things are going so much better now, so I'm looking forward to see you on a more regular basis during the coming weeks. So we're on the 20th of June. It's a very funny day today, weather-wise here, just outside Lyon. When I was in my car just 20 minutes ago, it was raining very heavily. Now the sun is out. I hope the light will be sufficiently stable for you to be able to watch this. I'll have to cut and do something about it if it gets too sunny, because today I'm filming in the afternoon, and the room where I do my videos is on the side of the house that has where the sun reaches in the afternoon. And usually I always do videos in the morning, but this week all my entire schedule is totally off because my son is finishing secondary school here in France, and when you finish secondary school, you take the baccalaureate, which is a number of exams that you take to validate your secondary studies. So if you can have good grades all year round, but if you are if you're not performing well to have the average grade on these exams, well, you cannot go on to university or any other continued education. So this is a big time for him, because the baccalaureate, or the bac, is really big deal in France. It's discussed on TV, on the news, and I have more or less postponed any obligations, any meetings with people, any specific obligation that I would have to fulfill until next week, with a very valid excuse that my son is doing these exams. He's not alone, of course. There are almost 750,000 teenagers currently sweating on their tables to try to succeed. And here I'd say the bac is, it's more than exams, it's a kind of rite of passage. When you say that your children, because my daughter did before, that they are doing this, everyone's, oh yes, I remember, and my son, and my little cousin, and and he failed, and he got it in the extra exam. Well, it's as I said, it's a rite of passage, and my youngest is going to be a grown-up because he's doing this right now. So that's why I'm filming in the afternoon. Very long way, very long way to explain why, but that's it. So before we get into our topic of Mosaic crochet, I just want to show this to you. This is a magazine or small book. I think the yarn brand Skepjes approximate pronunciation of this Dutch name. The yarn brand called it Boekazine. Let's see if the camera can focus. And this is their latest issue, which is it's called Reef. So it's a kind of ocean themed issue. It's over 50, I think 16 or 17 different crochet patterns. I actually, it's only in English with UK crochet terminology, so be careful with that. And I stuck it because one of my friends really wanted to have one, and so I said, okay, I'll pick up a few because I'm working with Skepjes for 2 yarns, the yarn Whirl, which I'm going to talk about a bit later, and the Whirlet, which is the solid colored version of Whirl. So this is in the shop now. It costs €8.95, if I'm not remembering this correctly, because it's written very, very small. Yes, €8.95 for 17 patterns, which is really good deal. So I don't carry the yarns mentioned in the book, but if you want to make something with the yarn I carry, please get in touch and we'll find out which one is the most suitable. And otherwise you might have a Skepjes stockist near you, so why not try them out? So we're going to talk a little bit about, just put that away so it's not in the way, about Mosaic crochet. And if you are a newsletter subscriber, you should be one. If you're not, I just remember I forgot to tell you that you have all the links to my website, my English blog, and the newsletter below the video. So don't hesitate to follow these links. So if you're a newsletter subscriber, you know that we have been discussing Mosaic crochet ever since the month of January, actually. But if you're not, you might wonder what it is. And when I started to talk about Mosaic crochet in the newsletter, I first had to define it, because if you Google or do a search on YouTube for Mosaic crochet, you come upon many different techniques, some of which I don't feel that they're what's currently meant to be Mosaic crochet. You can disagree with me if you want, of course, but to me this is definitely Mosaic crochet. So this was the first type, because there are 2 types of this, and this was the first type I discussed in my newsletter. Of course, I'm including in the description below, you will find all the links to these newsletters, because it's not very easy to explain very quickly if you don't know the technique at all. So this is one type of Mosaic crochet, and I'd say that this, or just as well, this is another type. So to start, I call this, or I can use it, this one. To begin my series in the newsletter, I started to call it this type of Mosaic crochet worked flat. Because it's a technique that is very easily worked flat, because you work back and forth. So you don't have any problems with, no more problems than usually with weaving in ends or so. And I called this Mosaic crochet in the round. And here, of course, it's worked flat, but I have lots of ends sticking out here because you only work in one direction. On every row you start again from the beginning, so it's very suited to be worked in the round, because then you don't have the problem what to do with all these ends. But of course, it can be adapted to be worked back and forth, as I've done here and as have done many hugely talented designers. So once I started the series, and of course this had me thinking a lot about the two techniques that both are called mosaic crochet, I decided a few weeks ago in the latest newsletter, I suggested that this would be 2-row mosaic crochet and this would be 1-row mosaic crochet. And I feel that's more adequate because they can both be worked in round or flat. It's more or less convenient, but it's feasible. But in this one, the pattern is really worked over 2 rows because for each row in the pattern you go, from this side, back and forth. And here, as I said, you start from right to left and then you start all over again and you could go from right to left. There are other differences in this technique, the first technique, when I explain in the newsletters, I think January and February. When you skip a color, because you only work with 1 color of the row, this isn't on each row. This is not tapestry crochet. You don't have 2 colors on each row. You use only 1 color on each row, which means that you are skipping stitches. And in this technique, you work chains over the stitches that are skipped, and these chains are covered by DCs that kind of plunge back over the rows here and cover up the chains. So this is a specificity of this technique. In this one, you don't really skip stitches because you work every stitch on every row, but then you, this is in single crochet, just like this one is, but this is single crochet in 1 loop only. And when you want to break up the line created by working the same color during all throughout the row, sorry, I'm a bit tired, you break up these lines using DCs, US terminology of course, that are worked down through the front loop left open 2 rows below. It's hard to explain this without showing pictures and so I really suggest that you have a look at the newsletters. They're linked below. There's also a link to subscribe to the newsletter, because if you're interested in relatively in-depth crochet tutorials, that would be interesting, I think, for you. I just wanted to show you the difference of the two, except if we don't talk about the technique in itself, but how a pattern comes out, because you can use the same charts for both of them, and the same chart will look like this in 2-row mosaic crochet and like this in 1-row mosaic crochet. So you can see there are quite a lot of differences, not only in size but in texture, and of course I inverted the colors. That's, yes, it's not exactly the same because I inverted the main and the contrast color, but just see how different they look. And I think they can be used in very different contexts too. So you can check out my newsletters about mosaic crochet, and I'd also suggest that you check out some great designers. I'm going to put on my glasses to make sure I'm not mistaken in discussing the names. There is an Icelandic designer who is living in Cuba, who is Tinna Thorvaldar. Sorry, my Icelandic is not perfect. She has done some magnificent work in mosaic crochet One of our recent projects is the Havana blanket, and there has been a crochet along it. It might still be ongoing, I don't know. Martin up north is another crochet designer working in Mosaic Crochet. He's living in the north of Sweden. There is also Mark Roseboom. I don't know exactly how to pronounce his name because he's Dutch. And Lilla Björn, who is a Czech designer or living in Czech Republic. I'm not sure she's from there. And her designer name is Swedish actually, but she's living in the Czech Republic. And I'm going to link to all these designers' Ravelry pages below, so you can go and check out their work. And if you want to know a little bit more about them, many of them have blogs too, where they share their information. Okay, so that was a little bit about the topic for the newsletters this spring. I'm not completely finished with Mosaic Crochet, of course, because there's a lot to do. I'm working on a project that I don't think it will be ready for the next newsletter, but it's a project where I need to join stripes in the round. So look out for a newsletter on that topic, because I think there are some interesting techniques to have a look at. Yes, I also wanted to say that, or this is also something that if you are subscribed to my newsletter, you have perhaps seen it and perhaps already replied. I have set up a small poll that I'd love for you to take if you're interested. When I research my newsletters and when I try to develop crochet techniques or well, make them better, improve them, or find out a new way to do something, of course I search the internet for information to see if someone else has worked on this and what they think. And what I find is that there are lots of single tutorials, and that's wonderful. There are some courses on really beginner steps in crochet, but I find very few. There are some, but I find very few online courses. And I'm not talking about free tutorials here. I'm talking about a structured course with a plan where you really go in depth on a specific technique. And I find that there might still be space for more courses of this type when it comes to intermediate and advanced crochet techniques. You might agree or you might not, but if you would be interested in this type of online crochet courses, please have your say, because I put a link down in below to a poll, because I'm actually planning on setting up a few courses like that. So I would be very, very interested to hear your opinion of what if they're needed or not, of course, and ideally what you'd like to see in such a course. So if you have the time and the inclination, please feel free to reply to the poll. If you already did it in the newsletter, please don't answer a second time, because it's not very useful. Well, as I said, spring has been a bit crazy, and I have not at all fondled yarn as much as I would have liked to, but I have a work in progress to share. So, and this is a continuation of another newsletter series about increasing and decreasing in chevron patterns, not in the center of the pattern, but on the edges. And I have been working on this stole or large scarf, whatever you want to call it. And actually, there is just one row left. And this there's just a small little edging left to work. It's just going to very, very simple single crochet edging but I haven't done it so far. And it's because I have been so busy. And once I finish this, I need to write it up. And of course, I want to write the pattern for it, and I want to put it out to share it. But I had so much on my plate that I just couldn't face another item on my to-do list. Now, the big, horrible, underpaid project is done, and I can finish this one, so it will arrive sooner than later. Because if you start with a bowl of wool, I talk a lot about this yarn this time, because it's a lovely summer yarn, and I'm working in it too. You start with this, and then you have only this left. Then you're not far from the end. Also, before I put this out as a pattern, I'm going to need to name it. What do you think I should call it? So it's a chevron pattern that increases and decreases. So it means it's tilted, it's on the bias. And I think this gives a very interesting movement to the stitch pattern. And of course, yes, the color changes too to make it interesting. But what would you call this pattern? What kind of shawl or scarf is this, in your opinion? What would you call it? If you have any ideas, please let me know in the comments below, because I would be delighted to have your opinion on them. And perhaps, why not give a small prize to the one who finds the right name, the one I feel is the right one, because for now I have no idea how I'm going to call, what name I'm going to give to this pattern. And I only have a row left, and I am now available to write the pattern. So yes, I'm going to have to decide on this quite soon.